I want you to imagine living 70, 80, or 90 years of quality health. What is the key word there? Quality, thank you very much. Imagine that type of life where you're not dependent upon any medication or surgery just to be able to get up and function every day. Who wants that? We all do, right? Okay, imagine having a predictable level of health in the next 10, 20, or 30 years where we'll know exactly what we'll be doing, loaded with energy, vitality, basically doing whatever we want, whenever we want. Whether that involves being an active mum or dad, traveling the world, hopefully, or being able to continue with your favorite sports or hobbies or pastimes, or maybe it's just being able to do something as simple as, sit at a computer and not have a blinding headache because you're trying to source or work out your next holiday trip, and sitting at a computer just always creates a headache. So basically it's really having true freedom and not ever having to worry about any health issues. And I think we can all agree that, would you agree that your health is probably your most valuable asset? Yes? Yeah, absolutely. All right, so, well, welcome everyone. I'm Dr. Neil Thompson, and I'm a wellness expert, and I'm boldly stepping out to try and change the health system, because what we really have at the moment is sick care. And you're going to learn a little bit about the difference between sick care and healthcare tonight. We need both, but many people are being given sick care when in actual fact they really need healthcare. And headaches is a classic example of that, all right? We've got to try and find out why you're getting headaches in the first place. What is the root cause of your headache, as opposed to just take this pill to suppress the pain? Does that make sense? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Now, the fact that you're here today means that you are an action taker. And success, in my experience, has always been reserved for action takers. So give yourself a pat in the back, because you actually bothered to come tonight and actually learn something. So well done for that. Now, in the next hour or so, you're going to discover some of the most powerful, effective, natural ways of getting healthy and staying healthy. I'm going to share with you information that's going to help you have more energy, get rid of those headaches permanently, become pain-free, dramatically reduce sickness, and ever your chance of having to have surgery or developing a chronic illness. Who wants that? Yes! Okay, absolutely. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to really why we're all here tonight. Headaches. They come in all shapes and sizes, affecting huge different demographics, whether it be kids to the elderly, men, women, whether it be corporate or stay-at-home mom. They can be really quite debilitating. And the kind of headaches that people experience vary hugely, from something just, a mild ache at the back of the neck, top of the neck, spreading up into the head, or that throbbing pain you get behind the eyes, or, someone feels like they're stabbing an ice pick in your head, to, what we call tension headaches, where you can just feel it's coming up from the spine right into the head, or sometimes it just feels like you've got a banging migraine. And if ever, those of you who've had a migraine, there's a big difference between a headache and a migraine, right? Okay, and I think there's a lot of confusion between those two. And if a person's never experienced a migraine, they don't really know what a headache is. And so they come in all different shapes and sizes. But there are a lot of common threads to all of them, and we're going to cover them tonight. And more specifically, we're going to learn why they develop, and even more importantly, what you can do to start to get rid of them. We're going to be talking about 3 key ones tonight, but we will cover some others as well. There's going to be a lot of overlap. I suffered tremendously from sinus headaches as a child, from about the age of probably 7 or 8. I remember I never used to pop pills much, but the one thing I did used to do is I used to take a lot of what they used to call Sinutabs. It's kind of like, it's paracetamol with codeine, I think is really what they had. And it was amazing how much relief I used to get from the pill. And I thought, oh, well, this is fine. As long as I've got the pills, I'm good to go. So from a young age, I learned that the solution to a headache is just take some pills. But I soon learned as I grew up that created problems and that created complications. And to be honest, I didn't really get breakthrough from my headaches until such time as I went to a clinic a bit like this. Granted, it was 30 years ago, so it was a bit different, but it was only then that I really started to see some breakthroughs. And I didn't even go there because of headaches. I went there because I had a back problem. But at the same time, it was amazing how my headaches started to get better. Okay, so that's kind of my backdrop. And in all honesty, I haven't had a headache really. I haven't had to take a pill for a headache in over probably 15 years. So it works. The stuff I'm going to be teaching you tonight really does work. Right? And if you don't just take my word for it, you can check out the Google reviews and all the rest of it. It's loaded with people whose lives have been radically changed with regards to getting rid of their headaches. Stress headaches are so common. In fact, many of these headaches are so common that people think it's normal. Like it's amazing when people come in and I do an assessment with them and I find out they get headaches. So I said, what kind of headaches do you get? I don't know, the sort of normal headaches. Well, what's a normal headache? And it's because people now just think getting a headache is normal because it's so common. So it's almost now become the new norm, that you're normal if you get headaches, you're abnormal if you never get headaches. Can you see how warped our society has become now? And it's because we're so now drug dependent, okay? Because we're never getting to the root cause of why we're getting these headaches, so that's why so many people have them. Now, have you ever wondered why the people who take the most headache pills tend to be the ones who tend to get the most headaches? If they were really working, surely the people who took the most headache pills would be the ones with the least headaches. Yes? No? Yes! So something's not up. So I love this picture. The pain starts in my husband's lower back, then it travels up his spine to his neck, then it comes out his mouth and into my ears, and that's when I get these headaches. Yeah, that's the kind of thing we have to deal with on a regular basis. No, not really, but they are common. And there's a dangerous belief that headaches are the problem. The headaches are not the problem. The headache is the symptom of the problem. What do I mean by that? When your body gives you a headache, it's like a fire alarm going off. And your body's basically giving you a signal, trying to communicate to you that something's wrong. Get this addressed. How many of you would agree that if something's wrong, it's intelligent for your body to give you a fire alarm? Yes? Yeah, absolutely, right? Okay? So it's your body's way of really asking for help, right? There's an issue here, get it fixed. Don't just ignore it, and don't just numb it and suppress it with drugs. Make sense? Because let's take, for example, imagine a fire started in the kitchen at the back there, and these fire alarms started kicking off. And you've all heard fire alarms go off. They make a hell of a racket, right? And there's a temptation to almost just disconnect the fire alarm and just restore the peace. But if you did that, what's going to happen to the fire in the back? It's going to get bigger and spread. Absolutely. And then if it gets bigger and spread, it's now not just going to be the kitchen that burns down, it's going to be possibly the whole house that burns down. So when your body is giving you a fire alarm, some form of pain or ache, it's trying to tell you something's wrong, get it fixed. Taking a pill is just the same as disconnecting the fire alarm. Does that make sense? Okay. There are many people who just think, well, maybe I should just hope it goes away. Right? That's a common thing. Well, I'll just ignore it. I don't want to take the pills because, I know that's bad, but I'll just ignore it and I'll just hope it goes away. The 5 most dangerous words in healthcare is maybe it will go away. It doesn't. Absolutely not. All right. So symptoms really are your body's way of telling you that you're either moving towards high-level wellness or away from sickness and death, or you're moving towards sickness and death. None of us are on this moving scale static. We're either moving this direction or we're moving this direction. None of us are sitting static on this chart here. We want to make sure that we are moving in this direction, and it starts with awareness and education, which is why it's great that you guys are here tonight. We want to be starting with awareness and education because now you're going to learn what you need to do to truly get well. You only start to experience symptoms quite a long way down. Right? So your body actually initially doesn't even give you any warning signal because the moment you're heading in the wrong direction, you'd be constantly flagged up with symptoms, and your body knows that that's not viable either. So you already have to be quite a way down in order for you to start experiencing symptoms. So if you're only now starting to develop headaches, the problem's already been building up for quite some time. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. We've got to nip it in the bud and get you moving that way. Absolutely. And it's not that we're all just moving in one way or the other. All of us are moving at different speeds, either this way or this way. And so some people are rocketing towards this, and we need to now put the brakes on and get you turning around and going in that other direction. So when you look at the nervous system, essentially you've really got three main components of it. And the sensory component of our nervous system, the part you can feel, accounts for less than 10%. And what that's basically telling us is that a lot of things can be going wrong before we're even going to feel anything. Take, for example, heart disease. How many of you can feel your arteries slowly clogging up with atherosclerosis? You can't, right? Okay. The first symptom of atherosclerosis is normally the heart attack that you have, and that normally only happens once the artery is 95% blocked after 20 or 30 years. Only then do you get your first symptom, literally after 20 or 30 years. Or how about cancer? How many people do you know who just went in for a routine scan, they felt perfectly fine, they looked perfectly fine, they're diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and within 2 years they're dead? Again, it happens more often than we realize, doesn't it? So judging our health and how we look or feel, good idea or bad idea? Bad, okay? And it's because of this principle. You can't feel things going wrong until actually you're quite a long way down the track. Make sense? Okay. There's a better premise. i.e., we've got to start to judge our health not on how we look or feel, but on some 5 key principles. Firstly, healthy is normal. Just because there's so many sick people out there doesn't mean to say getting sick is a normal thing that's going to happen to you. Your body, its default, its factory setting, so to speak, is to be healthy. Healthy is normal, unhealthy is abnormal. If you simply give the body what it needs and you remove what it doesn't need. So unless you're in the small percentage of the population who has a true genetic problem, which is going to be probably, scientists argue now that that's less than 5%. For the rest of us, 95% of people, healthy is normal if we give the body what it needs. Okay. Your body is smart, right? So we've said that, if there's a problem, it's intelligent that your body produces a symptom. The nervous system is the master system. It controls everything in your body, from the cardiovascular system to the endocrine system to the immune system, absolutely everything. And your spine is the suit of armor that protects the nervous system. So if your spine is all out of alignment and your posture is all out of whack, how well is the nervous system going to work? Not well, right? Okay. And would you agree that modern life is unnaturally stressful? Yes, absolutely. Okay. It's unnaturally stressful. So what's the answer? How are we really going to get healthy and stay healthy? Well, firstly, let's just put to rest some of the current paradigms that are out there. It is a dangerous belief that drugs work. Just like when I was 7 or 8 years old, I thought as long as I got the medication, I'm fine. And obviously, the reason why this is a dangerous belief is we've just earlier on said it's smart that the body produces symptoms when we've got a fire burning in the back. Is it smart that we just suppress the symptoms? Absolutely not, all right? So what's the big idea? Remember, headaches are not the problem. They're just the symptom of the problem. So imagine I'm working in my work environment here. Let's say it's with the kids. Okay, this is the kids' corner in this section here. It's stressful, right? Let's say I'm a teacher and I'm working 9 to 5 with kids in a stressful environment. I get a headache. So I'm told, well, just pop the pill to get rid of the headache so I can go back to my working environment feeling more comfortable. Is that moving me towards health or away from health? Away, right? Okay. Right, because what I really need to do is I need to change that environment that I'm working in or get out of there. That's why the body is giving me a headache. It's unpleasant for a reason, because it wants me to change something. And if we think it's just going to go away on its own, it's like that clock that's disintegrating on its own. It's not going to happen. Time will never get rid of it. So there's really 3 key things, 3 types of stresses that are going to start to cause your whole nervous system and your body to develop problems. Thoughts, toxins, and traumas. So basically, physical stress, chemical stress, and emotional stress. Stress is the killer. Well, how many of you would agree that modern life is much more stressful today than it was, let's say, 30 years ago? Absolutely, all right? And I'm glad someone who's got a few more years agrees on that, okay? You've seen both worlds. And when we get exposed to these stresses, what happens is it can develop a problem or a condition known as a subluxation. So stress basically creates subluxations where effectively your spinal joints can become misaligned. You start to develop soft tissue damage because muscles are tensing up all the time. You can start to get inflammation and nerve irritation, muscle spasm, lost imbibition, which basically means the disc is no longer able to hydrate, joint fixation, and elevated stress hormones. So whether it be a physical stressor, a chemical stressor, or an emotional stressor, all those stresses can create this scenario in your spine and nervous system. And it's not just car accidents and big traumas that will do it. It's often the small stuff that does it. But let's just talk about macro trauma first. You know, slips, falls, sporting injuries, etc. Yes, many of us have had some of these in our past. And when we get these kind of traumas, and virtually everyone is going to have had some. The latest stat is that most kids, by the time they're just 7 years old, have fallen 1,500 times, especially when they were learning how to walk. All right, and those of you who've got kids, you can easily believe that. How many times do they walk into the table or the chair leg, or just fall on their bum, or down the stairs? I mean, it's crazy. And every time a jar is transmitted through the spine, that can suddenly jar the spine out of its normal alignment. And that can now start to put pressure on the spinal cord and the nerves. The problem is we don't necessarily feel the effect of that straight away. Sometimes it takes 20 or 30 years of other little traumas accumulating and compounding before eventually we start to feel any symptoms. But then there's the micro trauma. How many of you have heard the saying, don't sweat the small stuff? You know, like box jellyfish, coronavirus, bullets. Let's just ignore that saying. The small stuff makes an impact. It absolutely makes an impact. So this is now one of the biggest problems in the modern age. It is an epidemic. You know what? It's been very good for chiropractors, but it's not good for the world. It really is not good for the world. And so much so, it's become such an epidemic. Physiologists have given it a name called tech neck. And essentially, when our necks are in these positions for long periods, it creates huge stresses on the neck, creating subluxations. All right. So when your head is straight up, or when the ear is above the shoulder, because that's what a normal healthy posture should look like, ear should be directly above the shoulder. As soon as the head starts to come forwards, instead of your head feeling like it's weighing about 12 pounds, it's going to feel like it's weighing 32 pounds if it's about this far forward. If it starts to do this, it's now going to feel like it's 42 pounds. And all that extra weight is now being supported by all these muscles at the back here. And obviously is now also starting to put pressure on the spinal cord, the nerves, all the muscles and joints as well. And I think you can see how modern society is encouraging that posture to happen. I mean, it's just so uncomfortable even me doing it. But next time you're on a bus, if you're on a bus ever, or on the train when you're in the UK, just have a look around and see how many people are in this position. For hours, the youngsters. And then you incorporate laptops, iPads and all the rest of it. It's just, you've got 3-year-olds now on these devices all the time. We've got a big problem. And the problem is it's addictive. We've got to start to change how we look at our screens. But I'm not unrealistic and say, just throw away your mobile phones and your iPads and your laptops, because that's not realistic in modern day society, is it? So what we need to do is we need to learn how to use these devices, A, properly, but B, also make sure we're doing things that are going to counteract the damage that it's doing to us. How many of you would agree that genetically we as humans are hunter-gatherers? Okay, I mean, most of us will agree to some degree, whether you're from the Garden of Eden or whether you believe you come from an evolutionary background. At one point, we were all hunter-gatherers, all right? And your body just wasn't designed to be doing this kind of thing sitting at a desk all day long. And so it's completely unnatural. Your genes are not expecting an environmental lifestyle like this. And so they're not going to be able to express themselves normally, let alone your musculoskeletal system be able to cope with those kind of stresses. You're not a giraffe. It's all right for a giraffe to go drink water like that, but you're not a giraffe, okay? And you weren't designed like that. You were designed to be upright, okay? That's how we've been created, to be upright. And that's what's given us such an advantage, so we don't actually have to be on all fours. And if we want to be upright efficiently, it needs to be like this. Because as soon as this happens, gravity is working against you 24/7. Gravity is our biggest enemy, right? It's pulling us to the ground. And when this happens, these subluxations start to kick off, including pain and headaches. Probably the most common cause of headaches today now. And remember, you're not going to necessarily feel these subluxations developing in your earlier years. Often we'll only start to feel them much later on. Because remember, symptoms often come very late, okay? And for most people, the symptom of a subluxation is no symptom at all to begin with. And it's only 20 years later do they maybe start to feel it. So when we look at the nervous system in detail, I want you to start to picture your nervous system a bit like a circuit breaker or power panel. So I've got a picture here. I'll just bring this around a little bit so hopefully you guys can see. Your brain is constantly sending electrical impulses down through the spinal cord, out through all these nerves, to every cell, tissue, and organ in your body. The body in turn is sending messages then back via these nerves, back up the spinal cord, back up to the brain to tell the brain what's going on. So there's this constant communication between brain, and brain. And if that's flowing really well, we get to be healthy, our body functions well, and it heals and repairs well. And joints move well, all right? And we don't get headaches. If, however, we start to develop blockages or interferences in the nervous system, i.e. subluxations, at any one of these points of the spine, now the spinal cord gets irritated and the nerves start to get irritated. And what can start to happen is that organs also can now start to get involved. So not only are the muscles now going to spasm up, but all these nerves are supplying specific organs. So how many of you can imagine that if I cut this nerve to the heart here, how many of you would agree that the heart's probably not going to work that well? Yes? No? No. All right. Is that fact or theory? Fact. I can tell you if I cut that nerve to the heart, it's not going to work so great. Okay. If I create a subluxation in this area of your spine, maybe because you've had a car accident or you've been in like this at a desk all day long for 20, 30 years, which is now irritating the nerves to this level, can you see why that might now start to cause palpitations, blood pressure problems, or even heart conditions itself? Yes, I can tell you. They now know that men with an increased thoracic kyphosis have a 63% increase in heart disease because of that. All right, it has a profound effect. Also, what we now are starting to understand is that we've got to think of the spine like a generator, and this part of the brain is like a battery. The better the spine moves, the better the brain, this part of the brain works, the better the battery gets charged up. The worse the spine moves, the battery starts to go flat. And when the spine is full of subluxations, i.e. areas of the spine that are not moving properly because they're poorly aligned and they're irritating the nerves, it also then causes this part of the brain to go flat. And this part of the brain controls 5 key areas of the body. Number 1, it controls the autonomic nervous system, which is pretty much all your organs. So that alone is one reason just to keep it healthy. But it also controls inflammation. So if your brain cannot regulate inflammation because your spine is not moving well, your body's going to become too inflamed. So everything in the body can become too inflamed, which is going to increase pain, even headaches. It also controls immune system. How many of you would agree that now is probably quite a good time to have a nice, healthy immune system? Yes, absolutely. It also controls hormones and endocrine function. All right? So if this part of the brain cannot regulate hormones well, a person's more likely to develop hormonal problems, whether it be menstrual problems. How many women do you think often they notice their headaches get worse during menstruation? It does. It happens a lot. All right? It's because of the change in hormones as well. But also, it means that mood can be affected, etc. as well. And then lastly, it controls high cognitive functions. So things like focus, concentration, memory, and learning. So it can even affect a person's ability to focus, concentrate, and increase their susceptibility to things like dementia and Alzheimer's. So we're now talking about a whole lot more problems than just a bit of neck pain or headaches. It's a lot of other stuff as well. And it's purely because the spine's not moving properly, and so this part of the brain starts to go flat. What I've just shared with you now literally has only been understood fairly comprehensively in the last 5 to 7 years in the medical fraternity. It's new stuff, so most of your GPs won't even yet know this, unless they've really been keeping up to date with the research. So the state of our spines and how well it's moving has a profound influence on brain function, one of which will include headaches. Also, you can also start to develop things like shoulder, arm, elbow problems, wrist carpal tunnel problems, hand problems, and headaches, particularly when you start to get subluxations in the neck area. And it's particularly subluxations in the neck area that will often create headaches, because this is the area that influences the brain and head the most. This is an X-ray of a neck. And so the person's facing this way. So this would be the front of their neck, and this is the back of their neck. And these bones here should be aligned and along the red curve here. But in this particular person, they're aligned along the black dotted line. So essentially, instead of the person having a nice curve that's arcing backwards like this, the neck's actually bent completely the wrong way. Now, if you were to look at their posture, you might not even see that their head's doing this. It might look like it's straight, but inside, it's bent the wrong way. So this person often has no idea that their headaches are coming from their neck, even just by looking at their posture. And that's why often X-rays are so critical, because you cannot see some subluxations just with the posture alone. Yes, it's a good way to catch some subluxations, but not all. And this is a classic example of why an X-ray is so important. And a person could be like this, in this state, for literally 20, 30 years before they'll eventually start to get headaches. And then they'll think, well, what was it I did that last weekend that made me start getting headaches? It's not what you did last weekend. It's what's been building up for the last 30 years. And the last weekend was just the last straw that broke the camel's back. That took you from being asymptomatic to now being symptomatic. Does that make sense? How many of you have heard of that saying, the last straw that broke the camel's back? It's a classic. It really is so much truth to it, because that's the way your nervous system works. You won't develop a symptom until it hits a certain threshold point. And it could just have been, the big bender that you had last weekend, or when you just simply were washing your hair, and then afterwards you're thinking, oh, why am I getting a headache? It's not the washing the hair that gave you the headache. That was just the last straw that broke the camel's back. Does that make sense? Okay. Right, stress headaches. Let's talk a little bit about these first. These are probably the most common, because what happens is with the emotional stress, muscles tighten up, okay? And they tighten up so much that they can literally start to pull the spine out of its normal alignment, all right? And typically, a person can often experience, stress headaches because of subluxations between C1 and C7, so basically throughout the cervical spine, and also the upper thoracic spine. So commonly subluxations in this area will result in stress cervicogenic headaches. Sinus headaches commonly are a result of subluxations at the C2 level, because in particular that area of the spinal cord and the nerves that come out of that level have a huge influence on our sinuses and the part of the brain that controls the sinuses. And also at C6 and C7, slightly lower down the neck. Migraine headaches. Again, C1 this time and C2, commonly right up at the top here. Some of you might even know, well, my child's always had migraines. I can't remember when they didn't. And sometimes it's the birthing trauma that could have triggered that. Maybe it's yourself, that you've always had headaches your entire life and you've wondered why. It could have been your own birth. A traumatic birth trauma, a normal birth is about 20 pounds of stress is applied to the head and neck of a baby. But as soon as you add forceps suction or C-section, up to 50 to 100 pounds of stress can be applied to the head and neck of a baby. And this is often when a person will sustain their first subluxation. But also traumas, car accidents, okay, landing on their head when they're a child, falling down the stairs. They won't get the headache straight away, but maybe by the time they're 5 or 6 or 7, that's when they start to get them, and then they can eventually develop into migraines. C6 to T3, again, very common, can cause the migraines, but also L1 and L2, because we understand that there's a hormonal component. L1 and L2 are the nerves that go and supply things like the ovaries. So that's why they can often be triggered by a woman's change in cycle. So there's a dangerous belief that there's nothing that can be done. Absolutely not, though. There's really 3 steps to correct the cause of the problem. Firstly, we've got to break the bad habits. Would you agree? Yeah. All right? Let's break the bad habits first. Then we add the specific exercises to help counter some of those just things that we have to do as Westerners now. And then chiropractic adjustments are going to help remove those subluxations. So this is to stop new subluxations from developing, also to help reduce new subluxations from developing. This is to get rid of any existing subluxations that you have and keep on top of any new ones that might develop, because you know what, stuff happens. We're in a world where it's stressful. Stress is not going to take a holiday. It's going to keep coming. Would you agree? Okay, so let's start by making sure that whenever you're sitting at a computer, your eyes must be in the middle of the screen when you're sitting upright. Most people set their computers too low. They set it so that the eyes are 2/3 of the way up the screen. It means you're already looking down, and it just encourages this. Lift it up. Don't be lazy. Okay, lift it up when you're sitting upright. Laptops. Just get a separate USB cable to connect it to a screen so that, just a separate USB cable to connect it to a keyboard so you can lift your laptop right up if you're having to use a laptop, and then you've got a keyboard low down, so you're now looking straight at the laptop. You're not having to look down. Kids with iPads, get them lying on their stomach to do it. So when your kids, if they have to use a phone or an iPad, because computer games just are, I know they want to have some access to them, firstly, minimize access to it, and where you are going to do it, just make sure that they're using the iPads and things on the floor, on their tummies. Keeps the head back, okay, and stops that tech neck developing. Fair enough? Okay, it's easy, and kids will easily manage that. But just minimize the time. Also, just be aware of the fact that these tech neck issues are not just causing headaches and neck pain. They can create herniated discs and bulging discs in the neck, which can cause constant burning, nagging pain in the neck and down the arm. It can be really debilitating, almost like a hot poker in the neck and shoulders. So that is definitely something you want to avoid, and the most common cause of it is looking down all the time. Exercise that you can start to do yourself. You will love these exercises, the YWLT exercises. So these are great exercises to counteract that T-Rex pose that we're in at the computer station, okay? And help minimize subluxation buildup. Okay. But then, if you're concerned you already have subluxations, which is quite possible, there's only really 4 ways that you can actually determine if you have them. Because remember, most subluxations initially are asymptomatic. You can't feel anything until the late stages. But chiropractors are trained to feel exactly where those subluxations are on the spine. We can feel the areas of the spine that are stuck, that are not moving properly, and we can help restore normal motion there. Posture. Posture normally is the window to the spine. Postural abnormalities are normally the earliest indications of subluxations. As the posture is off, so the spine and nervous system is off as well. When you look at a person straight on, the eyes should be level, the ears should be level. You might see something like this. Can you see how the whole head shifts to the left relative to my middle of the chest? So there might be a translation of the head relative to the rib cage. So always look, is the middle of the mouth directly over the middle of the chest? And something like that, you can see it's not. All right. Obviously then when you look at yourself on the side, a straight line should pass through the ear, shoulder, hip, knee and ankles. So these are immediately going to be just indicators that there's stresses on the spine and nervous system. Also another common one, just check to make sure that there's no rotation. You might find that the wrist is hanging is hanging more forwards on one side of the body compared to the other, because the whole torso is rotated. Or you might see more of one ear than the other when you're standing facing them straight on, because their head's rotated. Make sense? Okay. But to be honest, if we see issues like that, if we see problems here, an X-ray is really the only way we can categorically tell how that spine has been affected and how it might be putting pressure on the spinal cord and all those various different nerves. This is really the gold standard. Also, we can use instrumentation where you can do EEGs, where you can actually measure how stressed a person's nervous system is, where we actually get a window into what's happening in the brain, and it also gives us an idea of how well the brain-body is communicating. So this is also very helpful, gives us a lot of extra information as to how well the brain-body is communicating and how subluxated a person may be. All right, so once we started to break the bad habits, we started to implement specific exercise like what I've shown you there now. If there are subluxations there, the only way you can get rid of them is through chiropractic adjustments. Chiropractors are trained to detect and correct subluxations. We've been doing this since 1895. It's now the biggest drug-free healthcare profession in the world. Did you know that? Okay, it now is. And it's now the fastest growing healthcare profession in the world as well. In fact, it's the 3rd largest after medicine and dentistry. Now in the UK, you wouldn't think that because it's still fairly new and unheard of and still considered almost alternative. And chiropractic adjustments are gentle. Right? A lot of people think we just go in there with a sledgehammer and rack the neck like they see on The Simpsons. It's not really like that. Very rarely are adjustments done like that. And occasionally, they may be necessary, but to be honest, 99% of them are actually very gentle. All right? And find that most people really love their adjustments, And we always tailor the adjustments to specifically the type of person who's in front of us. Their age, okay, how much damage is in the spine, which is why x-rays are so critical. And you can really get a huge result when you know exactly what you're dealing with and you then perform the right adjustment with that person. All right, so how do you know if you have a subluxation? Well, get checked, really is the only way you're going to know, because there isn't really any other way of determining it. And you know, there's a lot of people who think, well, hopefully if I just ignore it, it'll go away. The problem is it just gets bigger, right? It does, it just gets bigger. And if you catch these problems early, they're much easier to correct and quicker to correct. The longer you leave them, the longer they take to correct and the harder they are to correct as well. There's really three big reasons why we have a health crisis in the world at the moment. Firstly, we have the wrong definition of health. We're basing our health also on symptoms. And thirdly, procrastination. A great doctor once said to me, Neil, the biggest problem really now with people getting healthy is procrastination. Procrastination is the biggest thief of health. After all you've learned today, if you want to start to get healthy, today's your day. Now's your chance to really find out why you're getting the headaches, and then you can now know what to do to correct them. So hopefully that's been helpful for you all tonight. For those of you who have any burning questions, I will be available here just to try and answer them. Thank you all very much. Okay.